Hi, welcome to this conversation. I am Mark Woods from Bible Society, and I'm here with Doctors Rhiannon McAleer and Rob Barward-Symmons. And we are here because Rhiannon and Rob have written an absolutely fascinating report based on a survey into people's responses to the death of Queen Elizabeth. Rhiannon, I'm going to start off with you, and I wonder if you could just kind of introduce the report and outline what it is about and give us some highlights from it.
Sure. Thanks so much, Mark. Well, this is a piece of work that we undertook about 6 weeks after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, and after her funeral. What really struck us as a team when we were watching the funeral events was how present the Bible was. And this is a quite unusual context. The Bible infuses British culture, but as less people go to church, we see that there's a growing unfamiliarity with the Bible, and we wanted to see how did people respond to such an overt and public representation of the Bible and Christianity. So we partnered up with a research agency called YouGov, and so we asked about 3,000 people. Um, all sorts of questions about what they thought of the Queen, what they thought of the monarchy, whether we should remain a monarchy or become a republic, what they thought of the presence of the Bible in the funeral events. Did they find the Bible passages spoke to how they were feeling at the time? Did they find them boring? Had they heard parts of the Bible they'd not heard before? And then we asked them about Christianity. Did they think the events should have been Christian? Was it appropriate both in the context of Queen Elizabeth's personal faith, which was very well publicised, or did they think that actually that wasn't appropriate for modern British culture and royal events in general? We asked them also about the Queen and her personal faith and whether it had influenced how they saw Christianity in the Bible. We found some really amazing things. So we found that the Queen was really popular in general among the public. 68% of the population said they were favourable to the Queen. We also found, in line with other surveys, that the majority of the population support remaining a monarchy. So over half of people, 62%, said we should remain a monarchy, but younger people were a bit more uncertain and a bit more likely to say that we should become a republic. One of the really amazing things we found that was Christians, and especially those who go to church, so active churchgoers, showed great warmth towards both the Queen and the principle of monarchy as an institution. And that's kind of unknown. We're curious about that, and we would really love to hear what people think about that. We also found that the Queen herself was a really great role model for Christianity, and that she was very influential, again, among active Christians especially. So over half of church-going Christians said that the life of the Queen positively influenced how they saw Christianity. And again, for churchgoers who watched the funeral events, we saw about a third of them, just under a third, saying that this had improved their perception of Christianity and the church and the Bible. So it really was a unique moment in Bible history. And we also saw that Christianity has a place in royal events. People think it should be there, and a reasonably low appetite for secular royal events in the future, even among people who don't have an active religion, or say they have no religion.
That's absolutely fascinating. There's all sorts of things that we could unpack there. One of the things you said was that this was a unique sort of Bible moment in history. Um, I guess one of the things there is just the sheer number of people around the world who would have heard the Bible read, and there's a case for saying that this is probably more than have ever heard it read before at any one particular time. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a strong case for that. Global figures are really hard to count, but in the UK, we know that there was a peak viewing number of about 28 million people
Wow.
watching the funeral events. But on top of that, you have to remember that some people were watching this on social media,
Yeah.
and those kind of figures will be bigger again. So yeah, a really unique moment in Bible history in the scope of the Bible that was presented, and to the number of people and in the ways it was presented. So traditional media, and through social media as well, and people being able to comment. Really exciting mass Bible communication event. And we have to remember that this is in the context of where people are increasingly unfamiliar with the Bible. And we know from our other research there is a very clear relevancy gap
Yeah.
between people who might think, yeah, okay, fine for children to know Bible stories, can see why that would be a good thing. But what does it mean for me? What could this possibly have to say to me personally or to society as a whole? And just to give
Yeah.
you some figures that we've pulled together, we think if someone watched all of the morning events, so that would be the
Mm.
state funeral, the committal service, as well as the regional memorial services, they would have heard 3,023 words of the Bible, which were forming 198 verses drawn from 13 books of the Bible in 3 languages: English, Welsh, and Gaelic. And that's not double counting. So if you added up when
Yeah.
things like the Lord's Prayer was said multiple times, then it would be even greater. And we've counted 40 Bible mentions across those events. So it really was expansive and so significant that actually 29% of the participants in our survey who engaged with the funeral events said they'd heard parts of the Bible they'd not heard before. But that
Wow.
rises to 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds. So really
God,
significant Bible communication moment.
that's really interesting. And I mean, not all of them. Um, I mean, not all of the Bible passages or verses that they heard actually connected with people, though, did they? I mean, some
Mm.
people found it boring. Some people found they couldn't understand it. I mean, you know, this is an issue for church communicators, I guess, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we asked people a series of questions about their perceptions of the Bible, how they responded to them. Now, there was some positive stuff in there. About a third of our participants said they found the Bible passages moving,
Hmm.
and 31% said they were relevant to their feelings at the time. Now, bear in mind that that might not sound loads, but that's considerably more than the people who go to church regularly, which is only about sort of 8 or 9%. So we take heart in that. But a quarter of the participants said they found the Bible readings boring, and
Mm.
about a quarter of young people and those from other faiths said they found the Bible passages difficult to understand. And a lot of the time, the Bible passages used were in the King James Version, which is high cultural familiarity for many
Yeah.
people in our society, particularly older people. But for younger people and perhaps people who don't have Christian educational Christian backgrounds, it
Mm.
just challenges there. And certainly
Mm.
people who are passionate about their Bible, and other Christians, how can we bridge that gap to help people
Mm.
understand what Scripture's saying, and help them see the relevance to moments and hopefully eventually their own personal lives.
Mm. Mm. That's fascinating. There's so much more that we could go back to in that, but I want to move us on just a little bit. And Rob, I wonder if I could bring you in here. Um, the the results of this survey, some of them really do bear on the forthcoming coronation, don't they? Because one of the findings is that people generally seem to think that Christianity has a definite place in royal events. So, we began with the funeral and the morning events around the death of the Queen, um, but that's not the only place that they think that Christianity has a role. Royal events in general, including the coronation, they think that Christianity belongs there in some way. I just wonder if you want to unpack that a little bit and reflect on that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mark. So, as Rhiannon said, when we were asking about the funeral,
Mm.
um, the vast majority said it was appropriate not only for her as a kind of a known Christian faithful individual, but 72% said that level of Christian influence was appropriate for a British royal event more generally. And so having viewed that event, they had this strong sense that was fitting for what it was, and 55% said they were happy that the events were wholly Christian, and very few said they found it alienating. And when asked about kind of alternative approaches to the funeral event, only 9% said they should have been wholly secular. So there is broadly that sense that, certainly looking back at the funeral, it is fitting and appropriate that it was wholly Christian. Looking forward, people are a little bit more kind of uncertain, or perhaps don't have as strong views. Maybe it's harder to kind of project towards a future unknown. I think particularly when we're talking about the coronation, this is an event that we haven't seen for 70 years as a nation. I was thinking yesterday about how I'm genuinely not sure historically when the last time Britain would have seen a king and queen consort kind of coronated at the same time, king or queen. So these are unprecedented events. But when we did ask about going forward, overall people were more likely to agree than disagree with keeping state royal events wholly Christian in the future. So 31% agreed that they should remain wholly Christian, and 21% disagreed. And when we asked about whether they should become wholly secular, only 15% agreed. So people were kind of as a whole twice as likely to agree that Christians that they should remain wholly Christian. But that is naturally going to differ across faith contexts and faith backgrounds. But even among the kind of non-religious, there wasn't this huge appetite for the events to become wholly secular. There is certainly a recognition that it seemingly a recognition that it is appropriate that these are based in Christian heritage.
I mean, this is just fascinating, isn't it? Because fewer than half of the people in this country now identify as Christian, but that doesn't seem to be reflected then in how they feel about this massive state occasion. It looks as though they still see Christianity as, in some way, well, is it that it's integral to a royal occasion and that royalty is perhaps in some way identified with Christianity? Or is it perhaps that they see Christianity as in some way integral to our national identity, perhaps, even if they might not be practicing Christians themselves? I mean, I just wonder what's going on here. I don't know if Rhiannon, well, either of you, if you have any insight on this.
It's a really fascinating question, and I think it's one that's going to be open for a while. We are going into a real transitionary period as we move to the reign of King Charles, and I don't think we can say with any kind of certainty what people think the role of Christianity in British identity is as things shift. But I think what is really clear is, in the context of things like the census, which show declining personal Christian identity, it is far too soon to be making any kind of claims that Britain is no longer a Christian country, and that the relationship between Christianity and modern Britain and things like the institution of the monarchy are complex, and there are no simple answers. And we'd really welcome other people's views on this, but certainly I think there is a strong relationship between Christianity and the monarchy, and people seeing that as appropriate, probably wanting to see some kind of reflection of the plurality of Britain. But it certainly isn't a case that Britain is done with Christianity from our data, I would suggest. I'd love to know what Rob thinks of that question.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fascinating elements that does come through is that not only in terms of presence of Christianity in these events, which you'd expect, but more generally in warmth towards Queen as an individual and the institution of the monarchy, churchgoers in particular are significantly warmer towards these institutions than the non-religious individuals, which is a fascinating area. But even beyond that, that doesn't account for that doesn't kind of answer the whole area. Even amongst non-religious people, there's still generally a warmth towards the institution of the monarchy. And as we said earlier on, there's not this push for it to become a kind of secular institution. So I think perhaps it's something around the idea that the church is a kind of a trusted um, place for these things to happen, for these high rituals to happen, for these moments of difficulty of transition, that at a social level, the church institutionally is someone we trust to take that on behalf of the nation, and whether these be kind of the coronations, royal funerals, which in some sense sit at polar opposite ends of a spectrum, insofar as one thing that's beautiful about the royal funeral liturgy is at its heart it is the Anglican Book of Common Prayer liturgy. This is the same ceremony that common Anglicans have been having in villages across England for hundreds of years, scaled up, of course, but at its heart it's that. And then at the other end, you get the coronation, which is unlike anything else we see in British life. In both cases, it seems the church is trusted to take that on and to be at the heart and to guide people through, and for Scripture to be at the heart of that, and the message of Scripture to offer a structure, offer a framework, offer a sense of hope in the face of death, and continuity in the face of change, as well as an understanding, perhaps, and this will be fascinating when it comes to the coronation, of the humility of a British monarch in the face of the ultimate King of Kings. The Bible is the first gift that the new monarch gets given, and part of that is about understanding that relationship between the kind of heavenly and the temporal, how this model of kingship on earth sits beneath a heavenly model of kingship. And that seems to be a model that is broadly kind of accepted.
Yeah. I mean, that's so interesting, Rob. Thank you. And I want to pick up something that you said and that Rhiannon mentioned earlier as well. And that is that Christians of all ages, so it's not just older people being Christians, but Christians of all ages are more likely to feel favourable towards the idea of monarchy than the general population. And I wonder what's going on there. Why should that be so? Rhiannon.
It's another great question, Mark. We were both surprised and not surprised in some ways to find that in the data, but what did surprise us was when we had a look in the wider literature, we couldn't find a lot written on this. So it is certainly an open topic. There's many ways you can look at it, and we do touch on some of them in the report. One would be that perhaps there is a familiarity with the idea of long authority and long history that's part of being in the Christian community. The Bible itself steeped in the idea of kingship and long history and being a community through time, and a familiarity and a comfortableness with the idea of authority could be in there. A sense also perhaps of mystery and sacredness and a comfortableness with ritual that is so kind of clearly presented in the grandeur of royal ritual that we see broadcast every few years in various events. And also, the research really pulls out the idea of the Queen herself as a good Christian role model. And for some people, it's tough being a person of faith, nowadays, and to have that kind of public backing, maybe kind of makes you feel a bit better. So there's probably multiple things going on, but as you said, the fascinating thing is there is an age effect. Young churchgoers aren't as pro monarchy as older churchgoers, but they are still more kind of pro monarchy, more supportive of Queen Elizabeth than the non-church going equivalent age group. So there's definitely something going on there.
Yeah, fascinating. I wonder if just sort of bringing things towards an end in this particular conversation. I wonder if perhaps you'd both like to reflect on whether there was anything um, that stood out particularly from the report, and it might be things that you've already talked about, so that's fine. But I wonder if you might also like to think about any points of encouragement for church leaders who might be listening to this or might be reading the report, and points of challenge perhaps for Christians, for church leaders, that they might take from this research.
Yeah, I think for me, I was interested in what I've just spoken about and the link between church going and interest in the monarchy and favourability towards Queen Elizabeth. That was a really lovely thing as a researcher to find, and something to look towards, and we'll keep an eye on it in the years ahead, because we are entering a different era, and that trend might well change. In terms of my encouragement to the church, I would say there was warmth to both elements of Christianity and the Bible in that event from the general public. And it roughly came in about a third of the people who'd engaged with the funeral events, which I think off the top of my head was something about a fifth of the overall sample, because not everyone got all questions, because not everyone watched the funeral. And that, it might not sound a lot, but when we're dealing with a much lower proportion of active Christians, there's a huge opportunity gap there, between people who are telling us, actually, yeah, the Bible spoke to me that day, and people attending church. And so I'd just say, we don't need huge numbers. Just think about those people who are warm in your community, and how you can kind of build on the familiarity of the kind of Bible that they're hearing in public events like the funeral. And it will be different, but potentially the coronation, but also things like Memorial, Remembrance Sunday, and the kind of Bible they might hear in weddings, personal funerals, and christenings. What are those touch points of familiarity? Because there is warmth, and that is something to build on. But the challenge remains that relevancy gap. How do we, especially in growing distance and familiarity from the Bible, how do we help people encounter the Bible for themselves?
Yeah. Rob.
For me, I think the thing that jumped out that was pleasantly surprising was the fact that people viewed it as appropriate not only for the Queen as an individual, but for a royal state event more generally. I think when we pitched that question, I was expecting the appropriateness for her to come out high. She was a known, faithful Christian. She was very public about it. It's fitting for a Christian individual to have a Christian funeral. But I thought the wider appropriateness might be lower. People might say, this is suitable for her, but but more generally, we need to be more distant. But actually, that didn't come through at all, and there was that broader sense that these things are fitting together. And in terms of encouragement, I would say I think the fact, that this sense of the church as a guardian of supporting people through these times of individual but also wider social upheaval is a kind of real encouragement and something to ponder and something to think about. As Rhiannon said, how can we draw that out in similar events in the lives of our communities and of individuals. The challenge is something we haven't spoken about yet, is that we did also ask about people's likelihood to draw on Christian elements in their own funerals. And as other researchers found, this does seem to be on the decline. And when we look generationally, obviously, as you get younger, a lot of people don't know. That's fine, they haven't thought about it yet. But it does seem to be declining, the probability of people drawing on Christian elements in their own funerals. And so that is a challenge for the church going forward in the coming years. If these are traditionally touch points wherein people who aren't engaging with the church are coming in and are encountering the Bible or encountering these messages of hope, if people are moving away from introducing those in their own funeral, they're also taking away those touch points for other people in the community. So how can the church respond to that, work with that challenge is something to take forward, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rhiannon. I think it's been a fascinating conversation, and it's an absolutely fascinating report. So much more in there to excavate and to learn from, and I hope that lots of people will read it and be provoked to think further about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.